The Last of Us 2 has arrived. It's been unleashed on the public, and with it, a pretty detestable story. I won't talk about the story for long because this video is about another aspect of the game. But the story itself isn't a case of, this just isn't for you, bro. No, I believe the story is objectively badly written, and I'll offer a couple of examples why. Joel and Tommy are both careful, cautious men, and this is what happens when the world has become a cesspool of good hunters and mushroom zombies. So, how do Tommy and Joel choose to approach a stranger whom they've never met before?
Tommy.
Joel.
After Abby gets a hole-in-one, Tommy decides to get vengeance for his brother's death. Maria reads Tommy's note and believes he's incompetent and certainly going to get himself killed. But Ellie and Dina, these two 90-pound
lesbians,
are more than capable of bringing her dumbass husband home safely.
Bring my dumbass husband home in one piece, please.
Seems plausible. There's nothing more precious than pregnant women in the post-apocalypse where reproduction is paramount. Even battle-hardened Ellie respects pregnant women. So what do these WLF big brains actually choose to do when Ellie threatens the life of their unborn child?
Hands up.
You're that girl from Jackson?
Fucking Christ!
oh man, oh god, oh man.
Now here's what would have happened if the scene wasn't so contrived.
Hands up.
I'm pregnant. Sorry about that, I guess I'll just forgive her now and save myself the time and effort. The Last of Us 2 is built on nothing but contrivances, each one ultimately leading you to the pathetic joke of an ending that made me feel like it was nothing more than a waste of time. Oh, and very pointless. It's kind of like how I felt after watching Donnie Darko, only this was much worse. But at least Donnie Darko had some cool moments.
Why are you wearing that stupid bunny suit?
Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
I'm sure we're going to see plenty of videos criticizing the story in this game, so I'm going to stop there with the story and begin with the spectacular levels of wokeness in this stunning work of art. But first, let's take a brief moment and analyze the original Last of Us. The story was very appealing, we could sympathize and empathize with the characters who we had grown to love, but there was something in this game. It was almost like there was some sort of agenda that I couldn't quite put my finger on.
And I don't like what I see. More specifically, I'm talking about our female characters. And yet we sexualize, we objectify, we marginalize. And this is coming from a guy that almost made a really misogynistic game. This Kickstarter happened about the tropes versus women in video games. But I watched the rest of Anita's videos. So while working on The Last of Us, I had this secret agenda.
You don't say.
Patriarchy!
Feminism. The Last of Us was about feminism from start to finish, but the story was well crafted. Now, what happens in the sequel when you take away the quality story and only the politics remain? In short, all of the men in The Last of Us were pathetic when compared to the women, while the women, on the other hand, were all strong and independent and had control over their respective sectors. Joel is a lonely old man who single-handedly destroyed the chance for a cure and many innocent people along with it, all so he could selfishly keep his surrogate daughter. Bill is a hermit that talks to himself. He's slightly crazy, oh, and he's also gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
More on that later. Henry is a coward that leaves Joel and Ellie for dead. Eventually his brother gets infected, and Henry is then forced to kill him. Henry then turns the gun on Joel because he's so overcome with grief, even though death is commonplace in this world. Then he kills himself. Tommy is controlled and belittled by his wife. He's not even the leader of his camp, his wife is.
Beta!
David is a deceiver, a degenerate, and a would-be rapist that gets bested by a 90-pound, 14-year-old girl. Tess was a strong woman who didn't need no man. Marlene was a strong woman who didn't need no man. Maria was a strong woman who doesn't need her husband. Ellie is a strong woman who only needs a man because she's 14 years old. But not really, because later she's shown to be completely independent after Joel is wounded. Joel didn't even need to save her. She saves herself, and then Joel shows up. The women are fearless. The women are leaders. The women are strong. The men, not so much. Feminism and much more is carried over into the sequel. And thus begins my dive into the wokeness crusade of Last of Us 2. Before I begin, I would like to happily announce that this game has been approved by the Council of Drag Queen Story Hour, but readily disapproved by the Royal Majesty for stealing transgender symbols.
Next, I have the Royal Majesty.
How dare you co-opt the symbols of my trans and gay siblings?
From start to finish, The Last of Us 2 beats you over the head with leftist ideology. From LGBT to abortion to victimhood complexes. Ellie wastes no time in demonstrating the classic screeching liberal immediately in the beginning of the game. It's truly astonishing. The game begins with Ellie awakening and the Asian dude describing the previous night. The nature of this conversation is rather silly because the developers opted to censor what Seth had said about Ellie kissing another woman, even though this game is about brutally murdering hordes of human beings. Comparatively, what's so bad about saying
Muff divers.
But only in the very end of the game do we actually see what happened.
Another loudmouth dyke.
So Ellie is furious and she's brought to the bar where Maria demands she talk to Seth. She is then forced to listen to Seth's apology, which seems very genuine to me. But being a triggered femoid, she would rather not reply at all than actually speak words like a human would in such a scenario. Seth even hooks her up with frickin' steak sandwiches. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say those are harder to come by these days. But Maria eventually picks them up and hands them to her because she can't be bothered to interact with a bigot. Ellie then dubs these sandwiches bigot sandwiches.
Bigot sandwiches.
She then tells the Asian guy that he can have the food Seth provided because how could she ever accept an apology or a gift from such a bigot? I mean, come on.
Come on!
Was it rude for Seth to say that? Yes, it was rude, but he made the unforgivable mistake of insulting one of the protected communities of eternal victimhood. Therefore, Twitter would curse him into oblivion. CNN would give Ellie a segment on Don Lemonhead's show and talk about identity politics and marginalized communities.
Marginalized? What the fuck does that even mean?
Homosexuality is a commanding theme in both of these games. In The Last of Us original, let's see, between the DLC and the vanilla game, homosexuals include Bill, Ellie, and Riley. In The Last of Us 2, homosexuals include Ellie, Dina, this chick,
Good. I got my girl waiting for me at the top.
and this asshole that wants to learn salsa dancing.
My guy promised to teach me salsa dancing.
What?
I ain't homosexual.
Hey, you think maybe you could give me some salsa lessons?
Technically, Dina is a bisexual, but all that means to me is that she's a homosexual half the time. The game also has transgenders. Now that is what I call representation, considering that in reality, less than 1% of the population is transgender, and less than 2% of the population is homosexual. This game would have you believe that half the men in your neighborhood are kissing each other and your mother is in fact a dude. Is Abby a transgender? No, she isn't, but they could have fooled me. Why did the entire game make me question it? What is the purpose? What is the point of her ridiculous character design? Her shoulders are broader than Smo's. Her muscle content is unachievable in this environment. The caloric intake needed to get a male or a female to that size is enormous. Abby eats a single burrito and we're supposed to believe that that's enough calories? My post-workout meal on some days was 2 4x4s at In-N-Out Burger. Seriously. I'm no stranger to the gym and I was once an avid bodybuilder prior to my military injuries. I'm well aware of what it takes to be that size as a male, even with more serum testosterone than a woman. To achieve Abby's size as a woman, she would need steroids, an unbelievably strict diet, and a dedicated lifting schedule. That is unlikely in this environment, so let's just say she has a severe boost in natural serum testosterone then. So we see Abby full of testosterone and enormous muscle to boot, Then we hear her speak, and her voice makes you feel like she's about to tiptoe through the tulips.
Tiptoe through the tulips with these assholes.
Now, The Last of Us prides itself on a certain level of realism, but this character design is one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. Owen! Her voice should be much deeper considering how much testosterone she has flowing through her body. Now, I've actually met female bodybuilders at Mr. Olympia. These women all take steroids, but the principle of high tests and deeper voices holds true.
Just go ahead and accuse you or judge you like they are God.
And I get to share the stage with her after years. I'm excited.
Definitely, I'm very excited as well.
Absolutely nothing about Abby's design makes any sense whatsoever, and it only serves to make you question why they chose this design. Her face doesn't make it easier to interpret either. She has a weak chin, but some of her facial features don't exactly scream feminine. Additionally, I wasn't sure if her breasts were actually breasts, and this didn't help me determine either. I thought it possible that she was just killing the decline bench press in the gym. Because of these reasons, I was under the impression that Abby was a transgender for almost all of the game, and I don't think I was alone on feeling that either. I thought this scene was two biological men. So why did I just explain all of that? I just really want to know the reasoning behind Abby's design, and all I can come up with is this. Neil Druckmann wanted to have a female embody the feminist principles of these games in physicality. Thus, they made Abby comically muscular to represent that women are indeed strong and independent, just in case you didn't pick that up through both of these games. And that's the best I can come up with. So Abby is not a transgender, but Lev is a true transgender. It is portrayed that Lev was originally Lily, and she decided to become a dude because she didn't want to become a wife by law to the elders, or something. So Lily shaved her head as men do in the Seraphites and became Lev. But because Lev decided to become a dude, the Seraphites tried to kill him for pretending to be a man. The angry Seraphites even stooped so low as to use improper pronouns.
How dare you?
It is ma'am.
So we were led to believe that Lev's gender switch was utilitarian to avoid wife status, but then he just stays a man after he's out of the Seraphites. Okay then. Undoubtedly, I'm sure some of the LGBT crowd is certainly pleased with this amount of representation, but some of us don't like this sort of content rubbed in our faces, on the other hand. I mean, if y'all haven't noticed by now, Ellie is gay.
I'm gay!
I knew this game was going to be a woke masterpiece, but I wasn't quite sure how bad it was going to be. Then the journalists' reviews came in and they confirmed it with their scores. This game is not a perfect 10, even if you don't care about political agendas. There are plenty of flaws in regards to story and gameplay, but gaming journalism is establishment run, and it is progressive leaning. Woke progressivism is the dominant culture in the West. And if you don't like progressive agendas in games or movies, well, that just means you're a bigot, a racist, a homophobe, and a sexist. And you also forgot to check your white male privilege, racist.
You're a white man!
And finally, abortion is also touched upon in this game. Not heavily, but it's in there with a pro-choice leaning. Dina reveals that she is pregnant, and Ellie questions if she's going to keep it. This seems idiotic to even ask, considering that reproduction should be number one on the priority list. Owen got his girlfriend Mel pregnant. Despite this, Mel decides to go on a patrol with Abby and Manny. Abby logically asks her if Owen approved of her leaving on patrol, and she actually says,
"Why would it be up to Owen?"
Gee, I don't know. Maybe because it's extremely dangerous out there and you're carrying his child? This was seriously one of the dumbest things I witnessed in the entire game, but Mel is a strong woman, bro. Her body, her choice. Men can't tell women what to do. So they go on patrol and immediately get fired upon, and Mel gets pretty badly injured. Shocking, I know. Oh, but she's such a strong woman that she didn't even feel the bullet enter.
No. What? You're back. I didn't even feel it.
What an inspiration. A pregnant woman fighting bad guys, hopping around warehouses and taking shrapnel. I can't emphasize fully how stupid this segment of the game is. Ultimately, The Last of Us 2 just takes the feminism from the original and puts it on steroids. Later, Ellie kills pregnant Mel simply because she didn't say 2 words. I'm pregnant. Well, it was her body, her choice. Let's just hope Planned Parenthood is still around just in case Dina has second thoughts. Just imagine Dark Souls if director Miyazaki was woke. Ornstein would drop from the balcony, and then we'd get a close-up of Ornstein and Smoke kissing each other for the rich lore it brings to such a game. Because that's what's important, right? Plenty of developers choose to tackle real-world issues with their games. Developers may choose to attach a political agenda to their game, just like the Last of Us series did. Movies do the same thing. It's not uncommon nowadays. The fact is that when this happens, a large portion of the community releases a collective groan of tedium. I would argue that the majority of gamers don't want to be lectured to and have their faces rubbed in wokeness for the duration of any given game. We get enough politics when we browse news articles or social media every day. When the plague of wokeness does emerge, I sigh and brace for the impact of the screeches of those that do embrace this phenomenon, a loud and obnoxious minority of people who demand that progressivism is in our entertainment to begin with. Those people who berated Warhorse for not having people of color in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Those people who berated CD Projekt Red for not having people of color in Witcher 3. Those people who berated Capcom's Resident Evil 5 because you shoot black zombies in Africa. Those people who shoehorned female soldiers into Battlefield 5. Those people who covered up sexy women in Mortal Kombat 11. This minority I speak of has too much power. Wokeness is a plague. I've been gaming since 1991. I've witnessed this plague accelerate in gaming for the last several years. I find myself yearning for a return to the industry of old, where politics were generally absent or less intrusive, where artistic vision wasn't constrained by greed, accessibility, or politics, where gaming journalism was for the gamers, where developers took risks and fulfilled an artistic vision free from the worries of offending the oversensitive.